Well, thank you so much for having us. We're really excited to share our story with you. Figured we'd start a little bit by introducing ourselves. So as Lisa said, my name is Melissa. I lead our global integrated marketing group across the entire brand portfolio at Gen Digital. And really what my team is focused on is strategic storytelling. So we build stories across the entire brand portfolio within the Gen house, focused on what are the new products that are coming? How do we talk about them to consumers? What are our seasonal stories? What are our evergreen advertising campaigns? Defining those strategies, and then we have a really unique position where we sit in between the creatives and the go-to-market teams. And ultimately, what we're responsible for is figuring out what's the story, how do we bring it to market, and then how do we extend it across all of our consumer touch points. On a more fun note, I am also a mom to 2 smelly teenage sons, as well as a pet parent to 3 dachshunds. So I am very, very well versed in chaos, which is great when you work in a giant company such as Gen Digital.
And I'm Steve Blackford. I spend the money, or am an investment professional, as Ryan said. So I run all of acquisition for LifeLock, so about $150 million annual budget across all channels. A big portion which is on the screen, whether it's linear TV or CTV, OTT, and have been there for about 10 years. I started out actually in finance and then realized it was more fun to spend the money than to count the money. So I moved over to the acquisition side and have been there for probably 8 years now. So it's been, if you would have asked me 10 years ago if I'd be speaking at a marketing conference, I would have taken the under on that bet at FanDuel, which is legal. But I have 5 kids, 2 stepkids, 3 at home. Melissa, I have 13 chickens. She's obsessed with my chickens.
It's a lot of eggs.
Get about a dozen eggs a day. It's great. And I'm actually native to Arizona, so this is normal for me. But glad you all got good weather because it's been off and on. And we call that windstorm a haboob, by the way, for future reference. But so yeah, excited to be here.
So Lisa gave a little bit of the background, but the first question we always get asked is, who is Gen Digital? So just a little bit of context. I like to consider Gen kind of the P&G or the J&J of cybersecurity. So we are a global company. We are a family of consumer cybersecurity brands. The company was built through a series of M&A activities, so many of the brands you've probably recognized, particularly in the United States. The 2 biggest that folks are most familiar with, Norton, of course, on the security side, and then the brand we're here to talk today about is LifeLock. A little fun fact, Steve and I actually both started on the LifeLock side, so we have actually been working together 8 years now, and always in kind of reverse roles, so the storyteller and the marketer and the spender and the brand person. But what makes LifeLock a really fun brand to present about is our history. So LifeLock was a company that started about 15 years ago. It is synonymous with identity theft protection in the United States. And what makes it a really interesting brand is at its core, it's a technology brand. But the company was really built through traditional mediums like television, direct mail, radio. And on top of that, not just traditional mediums, but direct response tactics, endorsement radio, host-voiced radio, and infomercials. So it's not very often that you see a true technology company that was built on the back of traditional media. Video has always been a massive part of our marketing mix. Our roots started about 12, 13-ish years ago when, at the time, the founder and CEO of LifeLock did a segment integration on the Montel Williams show. And he went on in about a 2-minute segment and talked about this new emerging threat called identity theft, what it was, why consumers needed to care, and what the LifeLock value proposition was. So no surprise to anybody in this room, as soon as that segment aired, the phones started ringing, and we knew that we were onto something. That then built into a massive video powerhouse portfolio. It is still about 40% of the spend for the brand. It has the largest video portfolio across any of our brands in the Gen house, including our international brands. So video is absolutely at the forefront of everything that we do from a marketing mix perspective.
So the next question, how do we measure success? Ryan touched on it. How do you show that success, especially with this upper funnel kind of digital or video media? I believe the full funnel marketing is alive and well. I think we think about it a little bit differently. But if you think about advertising and media, at its core, it's a math problem. That's how I think about it. I did come from finance after all. So you spend money to reach people. That's the first step. And then ultimately you try to drive them to your website to buy something so that at the end of the day you make more money than you spent. See? I can count. 2 is greater than 1. But that's ultimately what we're trying to do. And the end goal is to make the money, to make more money than you spend. You can reach 10 times the amount of people. You can increase your conversion rate 10%. You can do both. There's not a one-size-fits-all KPI to measure success. Ultimately, it's, did I generate more revenue than I did last year, last quarter, last month? That's ultimately the goal. So as we think about how we look at the success of video, it depends on where it sits in the funnel. So you can see the first step of spending money to reach people, I can manipulate the CPMs, how much reach can I get, how many people, how far can I make that money go? Then as you move down, it's how many can I get to my website? So as the media moves down in the funnel, am I engaging the customer from awareness down to consideration? Can I drive them to the website and just get them to the website? Contrary to popular belief, Identity is not a sexy product to buy or sell. So we have to get people aware of that, and we have to get them ready to buy, because it's not something somebody just sits at home and says, man, I wish I just had LifeLock today. So really my goal is just get them engaged, get them to the site, get them learning, because that's going to start their journey down the path. And then as they get to the site, obviously conversion, customer acquisition cost, average order value, that all drives the ultimate goal of revenue, which can be measured by ROAS and ROI, which I think we all know. But really, it's any measure of these KPIs can help. So if we go to the next slide. As I think about the funnel and say the top of the funnel, short form TV, I can live with a little bit higher CAC if my CPM is low and my reach is high and it's driving a lot of visits to traffic. What I can't live with is it's a really high cost per visit and a really high CAC that's just really inefficient. As you move down the funnel to direct response TV, clearly direct response. We want it to drive action. We want it to drive people to the website. We want it to drive people to our phone. Our call center is about 50% of our sales for LifeLock. So again, that's a unique proposition where it's not all about on-site conversions, because people may do the research on site, call in, ask questions of our customer service. So that's another nuance to our business. Is for a technology company, we still have 50% of everyone's on the phone. Further down now, streaming TV, and I think this is an interesting space where we're starting to dive in and play in, is how do you reach people? And this CTV spot can touch so many spots in the funnel. It can be that reach as you do and just go high CPM, high reach, or it can be targeted and really hitting those customers at a moment of truth or in a spot of truth where we want it further down the funnel. What's the conversion? What's the CAC? How is it actually driving those customers and revenue to our site? And then online video, again, a lot of these channels will span the whole funnel, but online video, again, how do we want to use that to be very efficient as well? And then on the right, we have our 30-minute infomercial, which after a lot of drinks tonight, turn on the TV, you can watch it, and then you can buy LifeLock. But really, this tells the full story. It's a complicated topic. It's a complicated industry, and so we are able to tell the full story, so really it spans the entire funnel, and it's still a big part of our business today. It's where we're balancing this. How do I move where the media is going in the future without leaving behind the people who are still buying where they're at today, which is a very important piece to consider. And so, but as Melissa mentioned, we live in a very unique spot as LifeLock. Not only are we the industry leader and really focused on performance, we actually created the industry, and our brand is synonymous with the industry. When major events happen, the Equifax breach, when other breaches happen, more customers actually search for LifeLock than they do for a breach or identity theft protection. And so we have to balance both sides of the story, because we live in this unique spot as the industry leader, which is when we partner with the storytellers.
And it's not easy. It is very, very hard to balance both sides of this equation. But ultimately, that's the position that we're in. We're a category leader, but we're also a performance marketing machine. And so that's where my team comes in, and we're really focused on how can we make both sides of this Venn diagram work as effectively as possible, because we do have finite budgets. We have to make sure that every dollar we're spending is impactful, but we have to continue to build our brand. And so ultimately, we start with the consumer, right? How do we do it? We really get to understand and dig deep into who is our customer. What do they know about the category? What do they think? What do they want from a solution? And ultimately, my team's number one job is to mine for an insight that is going to be impactful enough that we can build a creative strategy around it that will support both sides of this equation. Our current creative strategy, just to give you a little bit of context before we move on and we show you some of the fun creative, through a whole series of research, we were ultimately able to unlock this idea that consumers, our target audience, really felt like they were not going to become victims of identity theft. They understand that it is real and it is a risk and it happens, but because of the intense systems that they had built and put in place and the way that they were monitoring their personal information, they truly believed it wasn't going to happen to them. It happens to somebody else. It happens to somebody who's less cautious. It happens to people who aren't quite as wise and sophisticated as I am in the online world. So unfortunately, that creates this sense of apathy, and it is really, really hard to break down those barriers, even if you were just trying to do one side of this equation, right? So our job is, how did we take that nugget, turn it into a strategy that ultimately was able to combat that apathy by illustrating just how many threats are out there, just how easy it truly is to become a victim, just trying to get into their mindset to get them to think differently so that they'd even be willing to listen to our story. We then take that creative strategy, and we're going back to our funnel because we do believe it is live and well, and we think about how does that strategy then translate into numerous creative executions. So today we're just talking about video. Even from a video standpoint, as Steve mentioned, we've got 5 different roles of video in our purchase funnel. So how do we think about that from a creative standpoint? We start with that one singular insight, we build the strategy, and from there, we execute it creatively differently to support the different roles that these vehicles play in the purchase funnel. So at the very top, we start with short form, like most brands do. Short form is our tip of the spear. It is what we use to build our brand. We have 15, 30 seconds to capture somebody's interest, make it engaging. It's a category that's hard to understand. It's not super sexy and fun. So how do we do it in a way that we can break through the noise? We focus first on triggers. So the trigger piece of our messaging strategy is really just about trying to break down their barrier. So one of the debates we have a lot is I'm going to lean really heavy into that trigger in upper funnel just to try to get people into the funnel. I'm going to sacrifice a bit of what does that mean from the LifeLock perspective? What is the benefit or the value to the customer? Because all I'm trying to do is to get in their mind and get them to think about the category. So I'll show you an example of one of our current short form spots where you can see it's very trigger heavy. We do, of course, nod to the product and the brand, but we're really focused on trying to get into their minds about just how easy it is to become a victim. It only takes one threat, and ultimately that's all you need in order to become a victim of identity theft. So we'll play that.
Even if you're careful, there are more ways than ever for identity thieves to steal your information. LifeLock alerts you to threats you could miss. If your identity is stolen, a dedicated restoration specialist will help fix it. Backed by our $1 million protection package. LifeLock. Identity theft protection starts here.
So you can see how it's really heavy trigger, still introduced a little bit of the benefit, a little bit playful, a little bit fun, still a little DR-y, but really focused on helping to build that brand and awareness upper funnel. As we move down the funnel, the next layer we introduce is direct response. So this is traditional 60-second, 120-second. We use triggers again very heavily. By this point, people kind of understand the category. They're in this familiarity phase. Identity theft is hard to understand, so we need to give them a bit more context and understand just what can happen with all of these threats out there. Because the format's a bit longer, we're also able to introduce more of our benefit and start to introduce them to LifeLock, the brand, what we stand for, and what we offer. A layer deeper, as Steve mentioned, is OTT. A little unique for us with OTT, we tend to use this more as a retargeting tool. So by now, we are in the consideration phase with consumers. They understand the threat. They've come through and get the trigger. We've started to introduce our benefit, but here we really hit heavy on the benefit and what we call our RTBs, or reason to believe, so our proof points. What makes LifeLock unique, different, better? And then at the very bottom of the funnel, this is our conversion. So now we are hitting them hard with our RTBs. What do you need to know to close the deal? What questions do you have that we can answer? And a lot of this lives on the online and mobile space. So again, one strategy executed 4 different ways. I'll show you an example of one of our online product videos, and you can see how some of those consistent strategic threads are pulled through, but executed very, very differently based on the role of the channel. You also probably noticed a bit about one of the ways that we help to build our brand is just by differentiating from the competitors. A lot of this category is dark, it's scary, it's hackers and hoodies. We intentionally lean into our brand, which is digital living on the bright side. And it's all about making these products and services accessible and not scary, because at the end of the day, there's so much out there that people are afraid of. We don't want to scare them more. We do need to introduce a sense of vulnerability, but our brand in itself is really about helping people live freely online. And then the last level of video, of course, is the long-form infomercial. And as Steve mentioned, this is the full funnel, right? We can tell the entire story. We start with the trigger. We bring in the voice of the customer. We bring in expert testimonials and demonstrations. And we get very, very heavy into the product. So if you truly sit down and watch this 30-minute show, our goal is that by the time you start, you are ready to buy, and you're either picking up the phone or going onto the website. I won't force you to watch the full 30-minute show. I do highly recommend you do. But I do have a quick sizzle reel that shows a little bit of the elements, both from direct response and long form, again, just to kind of give you a flavor of how we play through the different elements of the funnel.
There's a new victim of identity theft every 3 seconds. Identity thieves can use your information to open loans, transfer home titles, even commit crimes.
This is true crime. These are real victims. And you're going to hear their advice next.
I was one traffic stop away from being arrested for citations I didn't commit.
Someone got my social security number, made a driver's license, and tried to buy a car in my name.
I thought just simply checking my bank account each week was all that I needed to do.
What you don't know is that there's malware embedded in that image. But I could literally take over any part of your computer, so I can watch everything you type, every website you go to, every email you receive or send.
Remember, the criminals are smart. You have to be smarter. LifeLock can make it easy to help protect yourself.
LifeLock monitors for threats to your identity, especially ones you may miss by simply checking your accounts or credit. If there's an issue, LifeLock will alert you.
There was a big yes button and there was a big no button. So I clicked, that's not me, and LifeLock took it from there.
With LifeLock, if you discover your identity is compromised, you'll have a dedicated US-based restoration specialist who will work tirelessly to fix the problem.
If something happens, you have somebody fighting for you. I don't know what I would have done without my restoration specialist.
For you, it may be a once-in-a-lifetime event, but for us, we do this every day.
Join the millions of people already protected by LifeLock, and for a limited time, save 25% with promo code 25 today. It's time to protect yourself. Call 1-800-470-8750 or go to lifelock.com/TV35 right now. Enrollment takes just minutes. That's 1-800-470-8750.
So as we think about not only where our customer is in the funnel, we have to think about how they're consuming our media as well. And it was a great lead-in from Atmosphere because it's perfect analogy. You can be getting a haircut, watching TV, surfing on your mobile device, while there's music playing in the background on a smart speaker. And all of them are related. And so as we move through this journey, and I think it is a journey for our customers because most people aren't looking to buy this until something's already happened. That's really hard for me to predict when that's going to happen to somebody. So we have to create that awareness. We have to create that consideration so that when it does, we're who they think of, which is going back to that full funnel view of what is the KPI. There's very different purposes for all of our media. And now we have to think about how they play across all the different devices that consumers are consuming media on, sometimes simultaneously, right? It's not just either or, it's and. And so now how do we think through how all of those play together, which is the next step in our journey and our evolution.
So that is it. Thank you guys so much for letting us come and talk today. I think just on a closing note, we get asked this a lot. The friction is real. I think sometimes people think we're siblings, we bicker so much, but we've learned that at the end of the day, it's the friction that makes the magic, and sometimes it gets to be a lot, and you just go out and you have a beer and you talk it out and you figure out the right solution. But I hope we've showed you today that you truly can do both, and we're really, really excited about kind of the work that we do and what's coming next. So thank you guys for having us.
All right. Thank you, guys. Let's see if we have any questions for either Melissa or Steve.
20 minutes. Sorry, I'm Ryan Spicer from Atmosphere, totally new. Obviously, you haven't seen me yet. Actually, not a question. I just want to let you know that in the last 20 minutes, you took this entire table all the way down through the purchase funnel from awareness, Terra, down to purchasing. So,
just make sure you use promo code TV35 so I get credit for it, please.
And Ryan, I know who you are. We have people watching that are not in this room, okay? Anyone else have a question?
I had a question which you did elaborate on, but I was wondering if you could elaborate on. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Mark from Yahoo. I ask lots of questions. How you sort of view short form TV, DRTV, OTT, and like throughout the funnel. My initial question before Melissa so beautifully elaborated on the creative messaging you're serving in each of those places and how you're trying to drive more of a conversion with the more digital video versus TV, but do you not feel that there's enough like that can also serve a reach goal as well? It felt like the linear stuff was more focused on CPM reach versus the digital stuff was focused more on conversions. I'm just curious your like point of view on the role that those various channels play.
Yeah, and I think OTT and CTV will be a unique channel that probably serves both. And I think that's where the full funnel is going. It's not channel specific part of a funnel, it's where is your audience and where are they consuming media. Right now, there are people still consuming linear TV, but just because I turned 50 years old doesn't mean I'm gonna connect back up my cable TV and start watching linear TV again, right? So that's where, I think the funnel has changed. It's about where is your customer in that funnel, not what are they watching in that funnel. So OTT and CTV and LND can absolutely be full funnel channels in that respect, because there's a part for a reach play in those, but then there's the part, like Melissa said, for the retargeting and to really hit them hard with a focused message, a targeted message, to try and drive that conversion. So actually, in practice, it goes both ways. A lot of those are full funnel in that respect.
Anyone else? All right. Oh.
Alex from Ivy. They say fear sells better than optimism, but painkillers versus vitamins. Can you tell me how you've leaned into that and how it's worked out better for you?
So I don't like the word fear. I don't like dark and scary. Unfortunately, it's what our category is. I instead use the term vulnerability. I think we intentionally have built our brand to be, again, I mentioned the brand promise, digital living on the bright side. We use vulnerability through things like triggers. These are the reality of things that can happen to you. You saw our testimonials. Those are real members. Telling the voice of the customer, talking about using stats and claims and facts and building that narrative in a way that can incent vulnerability but isn't scary and dark. You'll also might have noticed some kind of subtle nuances, and you didn't see the full show, so it's a little bit different. But when we talk about the risk and the threat, it tends to have a slightly more ominous tone than when we talk about the solution. So the whole idea is, yes, it's a dark, scary topic, but we're here to make it easier for you and to basically protect you from those things. So we do teeter on the line of vulnerability, but I will say we absolutely try our best to stray away from anything too dark, too scary. What you end up finding is people go head in the sand. Every time we do focus groups and we bring in scary concepts, it's head in the sand. I don't want to listen to this, it's too much. So while it can be impactful, we're not going to talk to the masses that way. It's going to very much kind of dissuade people from exploring further.
And I think that's back to what I mentioned earlier, was we just want to be top of mind when something scary does happen. Because that's what drives that purchase behavior is, oh my gosh, I just got a collection call from a boat that I didn't buy, and now I owe $200,000. What am I going to do? I mean, that's when that action is driven. So the purchase is kind of spurned by that fear when it happens in real life. That's really hard for us to create that same feeling and add. And like Melissa said, we don't want to. We just want to let them know we're here to help when it does happen, and we're top of mind when it does happen. That you're not even searching, you're just going straight to LifeLock and coming to us for help.
Your approach seems better. Is it based on your competitors? How do you demonstrate that you're actually doing better than?
Can you put that on the microphone so we can all hear that?
Oh, sorry. Your approach seems a lot better, and proof of how do you demonstrate that proof against others that lean into the dark side? And
I mean, I think at the end of the day, we're the category leader. So when you look at it from that perspective, we're not trying to keep up with anybody. We've set the bar, and we're continuing to set that bar higher and higher, and I think the proof is kind of in the pudding. But it's also a strategic choice. It's who we want the brand to be, and we want to be that brand and that company that when somebody is in that moment of darkness, that they know they can come to us and we're there to help.
And I think imitation is the biggest form of flattery. So when I make a change on my website and I go to a competitor 3 days later and they've basically done the same thing, we know that they're also watching what we're doing to try and get to that point as well.
Anyone else? Great. Well, Steve, Melissa, thank you so much. Everyone, another big round of applause for these guys.